more time in our series about really cool things that you can do at a wedding reception besides dancing. And I want to talk today about photo booths. It's kind of funny, you know, DJs added on photo booths, and some people think that that's a horrible idea. I want to tell you real quickly the story of how I got into doing photo booths. And I did them because I hated them. I'd see them at our weddings and I hated everything about them. And I really did it just so we could gain some control. Once we learned to gain control and began to do it correctly, I found a few tips that made it phenomenal. Right now, because there's not a lot of dancing available, a photo booth can be a really terrific thing that you can add to really bring things together. But I'm going to give you some tips that apply pre-pandemic and definitely apply during the pandemic and will apply post-pandemic as well. Right now, obviously, props are kind of a big deal. You know, having everybody handle props is probably not the best idea. And those of you that are doing photo booths, if I were doing a photo booth right now, I wouldn't do any props that get handled. Just because the optics of it look bad. Forget what your thoughts are on how this is spread, but the optics look really bad. So I would get rid of that. But here are some of the key tips that will make a photo booth way more successful than you've ever imagined and that photo booths have been. So here's one. Placement of the photo booth is everything. That thing where, you know, you're putting it out in another room or off to the side somewhere, and you now have created something that competes with the dance floor. We always, whenever possible, wanted to put it as close to the dance floor as possible. And that makes a huge difference because people are in the same area. I strongly suggest that you use an open photo booth. I bought an open air photo booth early on, and that particular model, I'm not just saying open, but an open booth is really a big deal. The only reason for a closed booth is for privacy, and privacy at a wedding is probably not something you're looking for. But having an open booth means that it's fun for the people who are waiting because they can see what's going on, and it's fun for the people that are in the booth. And with an open booth, you can put bigger groups. When you get bigger groups, you create more excitement and more energy as opposed to like just sitting there and taking a picture. So absolutely an open booth. One of the biggest things that we learned early on is the ability to do an instant slideshow. And I'm not just talking about a monitor that shows the picture that's being taken, but an instant slideshow that, you know, flows through all of the pictures that have been taken. Whenever possible, we put those on a projector. In fact, I used an HD flow, and we did a wireless projector up onto a big wall. When people see their pictures up on a wall, it draws them to that and draws them into the booth as well. We have some where we don't do a monitor, very, very seldom. In the beginning, we kind of went both ways. And then over the years, we got to where we almost never don't do a monitor. On those occasions when we don't use a monitor, the number of photos that we take is dramatically different. The experience is very different. You can also just use a monitor, especially if you're outside during the day, right? Projector is not going to work, but get yourself a nice big monitor. You know, we started with a little 19-inch, then we went to like a 23, and then we went to a 32, and then a 40, and eventually we went to projectors, right? If you're outside, nice TV monitor, which costs virtually nothing anymore, and you get a stand for it for just about nothing, and people will be drawn to that. In addition to the pictures that are being taken in the photo booth, you can preload that with pictures of the bride and groom. So when people first arrive, there are already pictures playing of the bride and groom, which is a cool thing. And then as those pictures start showing up of the photo booth, it's great. We would always try to get it set up very early so that we could get pictures of like the wedding party pre-ceremony, because we did a lot of events where we do the ceremony. And then now they're seeing pictures of the whole wedding party, and we would always run over and take a couple of quick photos during the ceremony, again, just using your smartphone, and then dump those into the photo booth. People would come back in after the ceremony and they'd see pictures of, you know, the bride and groom walking back down the aisle or their first kiss. Like, oh my God, how did you do that? So you can really use that to create energy and excitement and bringing them in. One of the things that most photo booths will do that people don't do is they'll do video messages. We would always set ours up with a 15-second video message, and when they sat in the booth, we'd say, okay, so the attendant would be very helpful and say, so you're going to take your photos. We'll talk about the number here in just a second. But you'll take your photos and then stay right there, because as soon as you're done, you're going to all record a message to the bride and groom, just tell them how much fun you're having, and congratulate them. And so as soon as that last picture was done, we'd hand them the microphone, hit the 15 seconds to record, and it would range from very sentimental, sweet stuff to like, wah! Right? And a whole bunch, if you plant that seed, just tell them how much fun you're having. People over and over saying, this is the best reception ever. And what a great thing for clients to keep hearing that about their reception. One of the little tricks I learned early on that I think is a really big deal is, you can set the pictures to be anything you want in terms of numbers or layout, right? So most photo booths have a 4x6 layout, and then the standard is you have the printer cut it in two, so you have two 2x6 picture photo strips that come out. And they come standard with 4 pictures. That was like the old take a picture, in a booth in a mall thing. But we discovered pretty early on 3 is the magic number, not 4. There's a bunch of reasons for it. One, the pictures are substantially larger if you do 3 instead of 4. I mean, you get 25% more. And on a small picture, that makes a significant difference, especially to older guests who are squinting to try to see it, right? So 3 is much better than 4. 3 means you're taking 3 photos each session instead of 4, which means that the line moves through 25% faster. You want people jumping in and out, right? So that's another reason. One of the things we discovered is, like, the first picture, people usually would like kind of sit there, and the second one would be like, hey, and the third one really crazy. And then the fourth one, they're like out of ideas and kind of reverted. And so like 3 seemed to be the magic number. It was faster. It looked better on the strip itself. They were bigger. Everything about it seemed to work. So, but every website I ever look at with photo booths, whether it be from a DJ or a photo booth company, the standard is always 4. And again, I probably wouldn't have even thought about it, except that I was lucky enough that when we bought the photo booth, the guy suggested it to me. We tried it both ways. Hands down, 3 photos per strip instead of 4. One of the other things that we would do often is we would switch it, and we would have, especially for like corporate events, when they would first come into the corporate event, we'd have them come in and take one single 4x6 really nice photo at the beginning. Then we'd switch that over to photo strips for later, right? So you can do the same thing with at a wedding, where you do a 4x6 and maybe 2 or 3 photos on that much larger photo. So get creative. Your photo booth almost certainly has all these options, but people don't do them. They just do kind of the same old things all the time. So if you'll do those things, you find it really helpful. By all means, take all these photos afterwards. We originally would always put them on a thumb drive and give that to the client at the end of the night. Eventually, we switched from that, and we just started putting them in Dropbox for the client. And then we also host them on our website through SmugMug. And so if you go on SmugMug, and by the way, you're welcome. I think my website's still up. It's premierentertainment.biz. And if you go there and you look at our photo booth, you can scroll through and see some of our photo booth photos. Horrible website, but I was retiring, I didn't care. But I think it still exists. And you can see, and when you see those big group photos where you've got 15 or 20 people all showing up in it, that's so much better than like 2 people going, right? So lots of great ideas. If you can do those things and present that to a client right now and say, listen, I know you can't do a lot of dancing, but we can do a photo booth. And you need to be aware of you still have social distancing issues. But listen, I'd be having people come in and take it with their mask on. And they don't have to touch anything. They the same groups they would be anywhere else. So when this ends, and we're out of the pandemic, and it will end someday, and you get to go back, come back and use these tips and you will love the photo booth. I went from hating having a photo booth at our events to I mostly didn't like it when we didn't have a photo booth, but occasionally they would use a typical photo booth company and they would, put it in the other room and they'd take too long. One other quick tip. DJs should already all get this, but that is the photo booth needs to be closed down during specific times. Introductions, toast, first dance, finale. When those things are going on, you don't want to be competing. So having a photo booth attendant who is with your company, who knows when to shut it down, and even if there's a line, you just have to say to people, hey, listen, we'll be open again in a few minutes, but right now it's time for the toast. Don't allow these other noisy distractions to go on during key moments. When it's the first dance, I want everybody focused on the first dance. When we used other photo booth companies, invariably they would either say, no, we don't close it down, or they'd say yes, but they'd still let people do it anyway, and it was very disruptive. So my minute is almost up, but that's a lot of photo booth stuff that I think you can use to get a lot more value out of your photo booth.